For years, we've been told the key to smarter AI is just bigger models and more data. But what if the real breakthrough isn't about more, but about different? What if it's about teaching AI to teach itself? Well, a new framework called Agent0 might have just cracked that code. So let's break it down.
So what is the biggest thing holding AI back? I mean, really think about it. We've got mountains of data, right? And supercomputers the size of city blocks. So where's the holdup? What's the real bottleneck here?
Well, the answer is kind of surprising. It's us. Yeah, we're the problem. Or to be more specific, it's AI's complete and total dependence on us and the data we create for it to learn, well, anything at all.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem, right? See, every major AI we have learns from these huge data sets that are created and labeled by people. Now, not only is that process super slow and crazy expensive, but it creates a fundamental limit. It tethers AI's potential directly to our own knowledge. Basically, it can only ever learn what we already know how to teach it.
Okay, so this is where the research poses a pretty radical question. What if we could just break that chain? What if we could get rid of that dependency completely? What if an AI could create its own curriculum right from scratch with zero humans involved? And that right there is the big idea behind this new framework called Agent0. And you got to pay attention to that name because that zero is the most important part. It literally means starting from zero human data. So here's the key takeaway. Agent0 is designed to be a completely self-contained learning ecosystem. It's like its own little universe. It doesn't need those massive pre-existing data sets we talked about. It builds its own knowledge, completely on its own. So how on earth does that actually work? Well, the whole system is built on this really clever and honestly pretty intuitive idea, a relationship between a teacher and a student. Okay, so the system has two main parts, and they're both built from the same underlying AI. On one side, you've got the teacher, and its only job is to come up with new challenges. And on the other side, you've got the student, whose job is to try and solve them. And this setup creates this amazing feedback loop. The teacher makes a problem, the student tries to solve it. Simple enough? But here's the genius part. The teacher is actually rewarded for creating problems where the student is most uncertain. So not too easy, but not impossibly hard either. It has to find that sweet spot right at the edge of the student's abilities. And that forces the teacher to constantly push the envelope, creating a slightly harder problem each time. They literally evolve together. But wait a minute. How do you stop this whole thing from just hitting a wall? Where the teacher and student just end up going in circles. Well, you give the student a superpower. The whole goal here is to create what's called a virtuous cycle. Basically, it's a self-reinforcing loop. You're injecting new potential into the system so that learning doesn't just keep going, it actually speeds up. And in Agent0, they do this by giving the student a really powerful new tool, a code interpreter. This is a huge deal. It basically lets the AI write and run its own little programs to figure stuff out. All of a sudden, it's not just limited to what it knows internally. It can actively experiment to find solutions, which just blows the doors wide open on its capabilities. And this creates this really fascinating knock-on effect, because as soon as the student gets better with its new tool, the teacher has no choice but to adapt. It's now forced to invent much, much harder problems that you can't solve without using that tool. And this pushes both of them into this upward spiral of ever-increasing complexity. Okay, so this all sounds fantastic in theory, right? But the big question is, does it actually work in practice? Well, the researchers put Agent0 through a whole series of tough benchmarks to find out. And the results are, well, they're pretty staggering. Let's start with mathematical reasoning, which, as you know, is a notoriously tricky area for AI. Just by using its self-training method, Agent0 boosted the base model's performance by a huge 18%. And that wasn't just a fluke. When they tested it on a whole bunch of general reasoning benchmarks, the improvement was even bigger. We're talking a full 24% boost in performance. Now, to really put that into perspective, just look at these scores on the math benchmark. The base AI on its own scores a 78, okay? Now, if you just give that AI a tool without any special training, it inches up a little bit to 79.2. But the Agent0 framework, which teaches itself how to actually use that tool, it just blows past them both, landing at 82.4.
And you can actually see this evolution happening in the kinds of problems the teacher AI creates. I mean, it starts out with pretty simple stuff, basic calculations. But after just a few cycles of this coevolution, it's generating these incredibly complex logic puzzles that need multiple steps and tool-assisted reasoning to solve. The curriculum itself is literally getting smarter.
So, what does all this mean for the future of AI? Well, the implications here are they're pretty profound.
The paper itself really sums it up perfectly. It says, this provides a scalable and effective pathway for evolving highly capable agents, breaking the dependency on human annotated datasets. In other words, this is a blueprint for cutting the cord, for letting AI off its leash.
And that, of course, leaves us with one final massive question. For so long, we've been the teachers. But if systems like Agent0 become the norm, we're stepping into a future where AI learns entirely on its own, a future where it could potentially discover things that are way beyond our current understanding. What does that world even look like?